Now we'll continue our game creation with creating new animations for our player and zombie. So we go to assets and we right click and create new folder. We'll call it animations. Now we enter the animations folder and we create two new folders. One is player animations and Control D to duplicate, F2 to rename, and we call it zombie animations. Now let's go to our sprites and go to, let's say, players. Now just to make sure, yes, we did slice them. Okay, now I'm gonna click on this little arrow over here in order to create our first animation. Now we're gonna select this first one, and just in order to give you the idea of how the idle animation is going to be, it's gonna be these two. Now look at this right side over here and you'll see it moving like this is the basic idea. So just to get that back over here, come on, yes, this is okay, and we go and holding the control button and to select both of them, and we're gonna drop it over here at the scene. Now it's gonna pop up this window in the animations, and here we're gonna go to our assets just as you see up here. Go to animations, because if you see now it's sorting it as the file in our how do you say, explorer. This PC D is my folder's location, so my cowboy runner assets on the animations, and now we are over here, animations and player animations. We're gonna click here and to type down idle player animation. Click on save. Now let's go to the animation, player's animation. Now as you can see, we have an idle player animation. Now the next thing that we're going to do is just rename our player to just player. As you can see, I just tapped on the player while it was highlighted, and now I can rename it. Other method to do is just hit the F2 button and I can edit the name. So that's for that. Now we wanted to create a new animations for our player, so we don't have the animation tab over here, so we're gonna go to window. Let's find it. Where is it? I think it's supposed to be animation. Now you can drop it down like here, or we can move it over here. Now we want to add another animation for our player, so now as you can see my animation tab, again you can click the Windows animation and add it if you don't have it, and as we can see now we have our first animation. So we're gonna click on the idle player animation that we created just a second ago, and we're gonna go to create a new clip. Now this one is gonna be our walk or run animation, so I'm gonna type run layer animation. So the reason why I give the name format like this is simply because I want to know what is the animation, okay, what's the name of it, if it's idle, if it's run, if it jump, etc. Now I want to know which character, if it's a player or a zombie or whatever it is, and if it's animation or animator or avatar, or there's so many things that we'll write down. So naming it the right way is supposed to be, you know, giving it the meaning of what was it. So Now we have only a player and the zombie animation, and we have two folders. But imagine that we have like 17 characters and 25 enemies and 59 let's say obstacles and what number is in another character. So you need to be focused and ordered so you won't get lost with your let's say typing or animation, because these things could happen, so pay attention. So run player animation, click on save. Now in order to add it, we just make sure that we're on the right one, that is checked. We want to add the animation for the run player animation, and we'll go back to our assets, sprites, players, and just select from the second one to the 12th. Now if you want to make sure, just look at this right panel over here, and now I hit the player 1 and player 0. It's not what I want, just to make sure. Now I have this one, this also, up to this one. Now this one is going to be the jump animation, so we're gonna exclude this one. So I'm holding the shift button, and right here I just selected the player 2 to player 12. So I'll add it over here, and now as you can see, now it's running. So now it's kind of funny, but let's give it a okay. Now we're gonna get to the window animation and animator, and we wanna put it down here. So basically, let's give this one. Now as you can see, we have an entry, and idle player animation is selected, and the run player animation is in standby. So what is it? Basically what is highlighted in the orange color is supposed to be our start animation. So if I want to start my level or my game in another animation like falling or like sleeping animation or whatever, there should be another animation that's called sleeping animation, and we'll start our level from there. But basically, because I want to start my level at the idle animation, so I just make sure that this one is set as layer default state. So if it's, let's say if I want to start my level in this one, this you can see that this option I can select it. Now here, because it's already selected, I can't select it again, so it's grayed out. So basically because it is selected. Now we're gonna learn about how to transit from the idle to the running and back, and from idle to jumping, etc. So just keep in mind. Okay, now I'm going to my player, and just to drag this one down here so it won't be in our way, and the project, yeah, that's it. I'm going to my player, and I'm gonna add a rigid body for my physics and a box collider. Can't add a component by the player because it's conflict with existing rigid. Yeah. Just a second, I had a mistake. I'm gonna remove this component, and first of all, box collider 2D is what we want, and that component is rigid body 2D, because this is a 2D animation and a 2D game. It's supposed to be a 2D. If it was a 3D, nah, it's gonna be box collider alone and rigid body without the 2D. That's it for that. Now in my box collider, now if you can see, if I'll uncheck it, let's move a little closer. If you can see this green area, it's what it's how we're gonna detect collision with our player. Let's say if the player hits an obstacle, or the player hits a zombie, or the player hits a coin. So this area over here is gonna match the size of our player, and it's gonna be invisible, and this is gonna be our gateway to detect the collisions and to start encountering and giving functions and methods to what happens to the game if the player's collider collides with a zombie collider or a let's say obstacle collider. This is gonna get back to 0. We can edit it in the offsets and in the size. Now I can give it a wider. It's entirely up to you. So whatever game you are doing, you'll know what to do. So basically just keep on the instructions so we can finish this game. Now what else do we want? We're gonna go to the assets and we create a new folder called prefabs, and here we're gonna create another folder called player prefabs or prefab, whatever. Now I'm gonna drag this player over here, and what it simply does is something very simple and very good in Unity as editor. Now before we continue, did you see that we this was a gray cube and now it's a blue cube? Now the blue cube indicates that the object in the hierarchy have a prefab. So basically, what's a prefab? Now if you remember, we created the animations and the box collider and the rigid body to our player. Now we want to save this kind of character in one piece, so we won't do it every time that we want to use this player. Basically, if I didn't have the prefab and I just want to add to another level, let's say for the level 2 or level 3, and I want to create the player again, I had to get the player, I had to edit the rigid body, I had to edit the box collider and the animation, all start over again. So if I know that I have a starting point that I want my character to have X, Y, and Z things attached to it, and every level I want to change, I'm gonna create a prefab, so I won't repeat my my actions every time that I need to use it, because now I'm using it once. But imagine that we want to use it like 10,000 times. I won't spend time on creating it again and again and again. I just simply drag and drop it from over here to here. Now as you can see, we have an animator and we have a box collider and a rigid body, etc. Now one thing that we didn't do to our rigid body, and it's freezing the rotation on the z-axis, so the player won't rotate in such a weird way. You'll see if you want to try to leave it unchecked, you'll see how weird it will be. Again, you can create a game without this one. It's gonna be a very funny game. I like to create in this cute stuff, but for our purpose we want to check it to be stable and not rotating. Now moving on to our zombie, let's say sprites, layers, and zombie. Now here we can make sure that first in the sprite editor that it is a slice, and another indicator is that we can we have this little arrow over here, and we see that we have like 8 figures and 8 animations or 8 sprites for our character. So this is another indicator, but just to make sure, go to the sprite editor, make sure that it is sliced and ready to go. Simple as that. Now we're gonna give it an -1, -1, because we want to spawn it on this side, and it should go forward like this towards our player. So the player is moving from left to right, and this from right to left, so that's why it's -1. Now what we're going to do is simply the same. Go to Assets, Prefabs, and create a new folder called Obstacles Prefabs. Now what we want to do is just rename it to just Zombie, add a component rigid body 2D, freeze the Z rotation, and add a box collider 2D. Yeah, that should be good, because as you can see it have like these feathers over here, so that's nice. Okay, now we're gonna drop the zombie over here, and as you can see it turned out to blue, so that's a prefab. That's how you know it's a prefab. Now the main camera is not a prefab, this is another indicator, that's it. Now we can delete these two, and now we can use our zombie or our player's prefab as we like. Now another thing that we need to do is go to the sprites again, asset sprites, go to obstacles, and we want to just showing you the obstacles. Now these obstacles are very big, and it's a huge. It's almost as big as the player. So we want to make them a little bit smaller. So nothing fancy over here. So we want to do is select 1, 2, 3, and 5. These 4, and we're gonna cut them by half. To make it a little bit smaller on the X and the Y axes. Now for the number 4, because it's a little bit bigger, so we want to move it to 0.4 in order to make them a little bit smaller, so it can be more convenient in the game, and to give the game a little bit proportions, so it won't be too big. And this is the size that I've been playing before in order to reach this specific size. So now the next thing that we want to do is selecting them all and just add a box collider 2D. As you can see, it filled it out with the space of the box collider, and a rigid body 2D, and to freeze the Z rotation. So now each one of them has a box collider and a rigid body. Excellent. Rigid body, yes. Now we're gonna go to the assets and prefabs, obstacles, and just drag them 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that's it. We can delete them now from our scene. And then we'll move forward. So that's it for this video. We're gonna create the scripts for the player and the zombie in another video, and we'll continue our game, so just stay tuned.